The Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room fell silent in shock. Chief Justice John Roberts, known for his calm and disciplined judicial approach, leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Kash Patel, the former Defense Department official who had just concluded his confident testimony on Supreme Court reform. Mr. Patel Roberts began, his voice steady with the authority gained from decades on the federal bench. Before I address your proposals, I must raise a matter of serious concern. He lifted a document from the folder in front of him. These records show that although you have repeatedly claimed a law degree from Georgetown University, in both testimony and public statements, the university has no record of your graduation. Can you clarify this for the committee? Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Patel, who moments earlier had been commanding the discussion with bold criticism of judicial overreach, froze. His face went pale as cameras captured his stunned expression, broadcasting it live to millions watching across the country. This wasn't merely a clash between two prominent government figures. It was a public unraveling of years of carefully built credentials, raising serious questions about honesty and trust in public service. Before we continue, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth coverage of these high-stakes political confrontations. To understand the weight of this moment, we must look at the backgrounds of these two key figures and how they came to face each other in this unprecedented public exchange. Chief Justice John Glover Roberts, Jr. had built a reputation for judicial restraint and commitment to institutional integrity. Appointed to the Supreme Court in 2005 by President George W. Bush, Roberts became the youngest Chief Justice since John Marshall in 1801, a Harvard College and Harvard Law School graduate. He earned Magna Cum Laude honors and argued 39 cases before the Supreme Court as one of the country's top appellate attorneys. As Chief Justice, Roberts fiercely guarded the court's image as nonpartisan. Though criticized at times by both conservatives and liberals, he maintained broad respect for his intellectual honesty. The judicial oath to support and defend the Constitution is not a partisan pledge. He stated in 2018, "Judges don't belong to political parties, and they don't rule based on personal preferences." Kash Patel, however, had taken a very different route to influence. The son of Indian immigrants, Patel rose quickly from a public defender office to senior positions in the Trump administration, including at the National Security Council and the Department of Defense. Patel often highlighted his legal training, citing a Georgetown University Law Center degree as proof of his qualifications. "My legal training at Georgetown prepared me to understand both the letter and spirit of our laws," he said in a 2022 interview. "That foundation has guided my public service." The Judiciary Committee hearing, where Roberts and Patel faced off, was focused on proposed Supreme Court reforms, potentially expanding the court, introducing term limits, or enforcing a binding ethics code. Roberts rarely appeared before Congress, but the seriousness of the reforms led him to defend the court's independence. Personally, Patel, now heading a foundation focused on government accountability, was invited by Republican members to argue that the Roberts court had overstepped its constitutional limits. He strongly criticized what he called judicial activism, presenting himself as a defender of strict constitutional boundaries. What no one knew was that days before the hearing, Roberts' office had received an anonymous package with Georgetown Law Center records. They confirmed that Patel had attended the school for a short time but never completed his degree. Roberts quietly verified the information through official channels. Faced with an ethical dilemma, stay silent or expose a material misrepresentation before Congress, Roberts chose to confront Patel directly. The hearing had been underway for 2 hours when Patel began his testimony. The wood-paneled room with its elevated dais and rows of senators set a formal tone. Committee Chairman Dick Durbin stressed the historical importance of the discussion, reminding attendees of the gravity of Supreme Court reform. Patel, in a charcoal suit with an American flag pin, spoke confidently. He criticized judicial activism and insisted that his Georgetown legal training shaped his understanding of constitutional limits. "The Constitution clearly restricts judicial power," he said firmly. "My legal education and government experience have shown me how judicial overreach threatens democracy." Roberts sat motionless, his expression unreadable, except for a slight tightening around his eyes, visible only to those who knew him well. When Patel finished, Chairman Durbin invited Roberts to respond. The Chief Justice thanked the committee, but immediately turned to Patel. "Double quotes, Mr. Patel," Roberts began. Before I respond to your proposals, I must address a matter of serious concern. He held up the document. Georgetown University records show no evidence of your graduation. Can you explain this discrepancy? The room erupted again. Senators exchanged uneasy glances as Durbin called for order. Patel, visibly shaken, fumbled with his microphone. There must be some administrative error, he stammered. I attended Georgetown Law and completed my degree requirements. Roberts replied with calm precision, Mr. Patel, I verified this directly with Georgetown's registrar. Their records show you were enrolled for 3 semesters between 2001 and 2002, withdrew, and were never awarded a Juris Doctor degree. He then raised another document. This committee also has your official biography and transcripts from 7 separate congressional testimonies in which you claim this degree under oath that suggests a consistent pattern of misrepresentation. Senator Josh Hole, Patel's strongest supporter, attempted to intervene. Mr. Chairman, this seems far outside the scope of today's hearing. The Chief Justice was invited to discuss court reform, not to investigate witnesses. Chairman Dick Durbin, clearly processing the weight of the revelation, responded firmly. Asterisk, Senator Hawley. When a witness potentially misrepresents their credentials before this committee, especially when those credentials are directly tied to their testimony, it falls well within the scope of our proceedings. Asterisk, turning to Patel, he added, Mr. Patel, you have the right to respond to the Chief Justice's statement. Please remember that testimony before this committee is given under oath. Asterisk, Patel, now visibly struggling to regain control of the situation, spoke cautiously. There is clearly some misunderstanding. I completed my coursework at Georgetown. If there is an administrative issue with how that was recorded, I wasn't aware of it until now. My understanding has always been that I met the requirements for my degree. Asterisk, Roberts, trained by decades of weighing credibility, replied with the same deliberate precision he used in judicial opinions. Asterisk, Mr. Patel, Georgetown, law has no record of you completing the required 85 credit hours for graduation. Their records show you completed only 34 credits before withdrawing. There is also no record of you enrolling in the courses you specifically mentioned today. Furthermore, Georgetown has confirmed that no diploma or degree was ever issued to you. Asterisk, Roberts continued his tone, professional but unwavering. This committee is considering major changes to a co-equal branch of government based partly on testimony from individuals claiming legal expertise. The accuracy of those credentials is therefore directly relevant. Senator Ted Cruz attempted to shift the discussion. Mr. Chairman, regardless of academic credentials, Mr. Patel's government service gives him valuable insight. Many Americans without law degrees have meaningful perspectives on the judiciary. Roberts nodded slightly. That's correct, Senator Cruz. Citizens from all backgrounds contribute valuable opinions in democratic debate. However, when someone specifically claims professional credentials they do not have, especially under oath, serious questions arise about the reliability of their other statements. As cameras rolled, Patel's expression hardened, shifting from shock to anger. With all due respect, Chief Justice Roberts, you're trying to discredit me instead of addressing my criticisms of the court. This feels like a personal attack meant to distract from legitimate concerns about judicial accountability. Roberts, still composed, responded calmly. Mr. Patel, I am only clarifying a fact that is directly relevant to these proceedings. You presented yourself as having legal training that Georgetown University confirms you do not possess. This is not a personal matter. It's about the integrity of testimony before Congress on constitutional issues. Asterisk, recognizing the extraordinary turn of events. Chairman Durbin called for a 15-minute recess to allow members to regroup. Cameras captured Patel in an animated discussion with his legal counsel. His gestures increasingly agitated as the seriousness of the moment became clear. Asterisk. When the hearing resumed, the tone of the room had shifted dramatically. What began as a debate on Supreme Court reform had become a real-time test of truth and accountability in government. Journalists were filing rapid updates, and social media was ablaze with reactions to the confrontation. Asterisk, Durbin addressed the committee. Before we proceed, I want to acknowledge how unusual these circumstances are. Mr. Patel, in light of the information presented, do you wish to clarify or correct your earlier statements regarding your academic credentials? Asterisk, camera zoomed in on Patel, capturing what would become the defining image of the hearing. Once confident government official, now facing public reckoning. After a brief consultation with his attorney, Patel leaned into the microphone. Mr. Chairman, after speaking with counsel, I'd like to clarify my earlier remarks. While I attended Georgetown Law for a period, I did not complete the program as I believed. There appears to have been a misunderstanding about my academic status that I need to investigate. I apologize to the committee for any confusion. This has caused asterisk. This hesitant admission only raised more doubts. Senator Amy Klobuchar herself, a graduate of the University of Chicago Law School, pressed further asterisk. Mr. Patel, are you saying that for more than 50 years you've believed you had a law degree when you actually didn't? How is that possible for something so central to your professional identity? Patel's tone grew defensive. Senator, my focus has always been on serving the country, not administrative details. I completed what I understood to be the requirements and moved forward with my public service career. Asterisk Roberts, silent since the recess, spoke again with his usual measured precision. Asterisk, Mr. Chairman, if I may add one final point. Our system of government relies on public trust. When officials misrepresent their qualifications, whether intentionally or by mistake, erodes that trust. As someone who has dedicated his career to upholding the rule of law, I felt obligated to ensure these proceedings rest on accurate information, particularly when discussing reforms to the Supreme Court as an institution. The hearing eventually returned to policy discussions, but the atmosphere had permanently shifted. Patel, once an outspoken critic of judicial authority, now sat diminished, his credibility damaged. Roberts, by contrast, demonstrated the very principles of integrity he had long defended from the bench. Asterisk, as the session concluded, Chairman Durbin announced that Patel's testimony would be referred to appropriate authorities for further investigation. What began as a question about academic credentials had now evolved into a potential criminal inquiry for providing false statements to Congress. The fallout from the Roberts-Patel clash spread rapidly through Washington. Reporters crowded Senate hallways seeking reactions from members about the dramatic exchange. Roberts, maintaining the judicial restraint that defined his career, declined further comment as he left. His challenge to Patel's credentials had been delivered without anger-only facts and careful reasoning, which made its impact even more devastating. Asterisk, outside the hearing room, Chairman Durbin addressed reporters with visible concern. Asterisk, what we saw today raises questions beyond this single hearing. When witnesses testify before Congress on constitutional matters, we depend on the accuracy of their stated credentials. This committee will review this issue further, including Mr. Patel's prior congressional testimonies. As Durbin spoke, Georgetown University Law Center released an official statement confirming Roberts' information. Dean William wrote, asterisk, we can confirm that while Mr. Kash Patel was enrolled at Georgetown University Law Center from fall 2001 through fall 2002, he did not complete the requirements for a Juris Doctor degree, and no such degree was ever awarded. Georgetown Law values its alumni serving in government, but we must correct the record when our institution's name is used in connection with unearned credentials. We are cooperating fully with appropriate authorities. This confirmation transformed what might have been dismissed as an administrative mistake into clear evidence of credential misrepresentation. For Patel, who had long used his supposed legal expertise to build credibility, the consequences were swift asterisk. By that evening, major news outlets had uncovered numerous instances where Patel explicitly cited his Georgetown law degree, including in official Trump administration biographies, congressional testimonies, and television interviews. Fox News legal analyst Jonathan Turley, a law professor at George Washington University, commented asterisk for Chief Justice Roberts. The fallout from the confrontation further solidified his image as a defender of institutional integrity. Legal scholars noted that while directly challenging a witness was rare for a Chief Justice, it underscored his commitment to the rule of law and factual accuracy in matters affecting the judiciary. Asterisk Harvard law professor Noah Feldman wrote in Bloomberg, asterisk Roberts' intervention wasn't political. It was about protecting the integrity of proceedings that directly influence the Supreme Court as an institution. When a witness misrepresents legal credentials while testifying on judicial reform, the Chief Justice has not only the right, but perhaps the duty to correct the record. Conservative legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Andy McCarthy echoed this view in National Review. Whatever one thinks of Roberts' judicial philosophy, his actions showed why he's respected across the political spectrum. He didn't attack Patel's opinions or political leanings. He simply demanded factual accuracy in a proceeding with constitutional stakes. Asterisk. The morning after the hearing, President Martin Wilson addressed the issue during a scheduled press conference. The allegations regarding Mr. Patel's credentials are deeply troubling. I've directed the White House counsel's office to review all instances where he represented the previous administration, especially in matters requiring legal expertise. Asterisk for Patel. The 24 hours following the clash were devastating. The foundation he had recently founded to promote government accountability announced he would take a leave of absence pending investigation. Media outlets quietly canceled his scheduled appearances as a legal commentator. Most significantly, the Department of Justice confirmed it had opened a preliminary investigation into possible violations of 18 U.S.C. 101, which prohibits knowingly making false statements in matters under federal jurisdiction. Legal experts pointed out that Patel's repeated testimonies before congressional committees under false pretenses could qualify as federal crimes. Asterisk 3 days after the hearing, Patel issued a written statement striking a different tone than his defensive stance during the session. After reviewing my records, I must admit that I did not complete my law degree at Georgetown, as I long believed and represented. While this started as a misunderstanding, I should have verified my credentials more carefully. I accept full responsibility for this serious mistake and apologize to all who placed their trust in me. I'm cooperating fully with the ongoing inquiries and have retained counsel to help me take the appropriate steps to correct the record. Asterisk. But the statement came too late to stop the damage. Former Trump administration colleagues distanced themselves, many claiming they had been unaware of any questions regarding Patel's credentials during his government service. A week later, Chairman Durbin announced that the Senate Judiciary Committee had unanimously voted to refer Patel's testimony to the Department of Justice for a potential criminal investigation. The bipartisan nature of the referral underscored how seriously Congress viewed the misrepresentation. As Patel faced mounting legal and professional consequences, Roberts returned to the Supreme Court for scheduled oral arguments. Court observers noted subtle signs of support from his colleagues. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, often his ideological opposite, went out of her way to praise the clarity of his questioning in a particularly complex case. The hearing's broader implications soon became apparent. Editorial boards nationwide pointed out the irony. A hearing meant to scrutinize judicial accountability ended up showcasing Roberts' own unwavering commitment to truth and institutional integrity. Asterisk. The Wall Street Journal editorial board remarked, asterisk, those seeking to limit the court's independence might consider that it was Chief Justice Roberts' politicians who had the courage to insist on truth in a public proceeding, regardless of political consequences. For ordinary Americans, the confrontation offered a rare moment of clarity in a political environment often clouded by partisanship. One retired teacher from Ohio told CNN, asterisk, I don't follow politics much anymore or theater, but this was different. Someone lied about their credentials and someone else had the integrity to call it out with proof. That's accountability, plain and simple. The incident's impact stretched far beyond Patel's personal downfall. It sparked a national conversation about honesty in public service, accountability for misrepresentations, and the essential role of truth in democracy. Asterisk 3. Months after the hearing, the Department of Justice announced that Patel had accepted a plea agreement. He pleaded guilty to 2 felony counts of making false statements to Congress, paid a significant fine, agreed to community service, and issued a full public acknowledgement of his misrepresentations. Asterisk in his statement accompanying the plea, Patel wrote, asterisk, what began as an effort to hide my failure to finish law school grew into a false identity I maintained for years. Each time I repeated it, it became harder to correct. I've learned the hard way that once integrity is compromised, it's nearly impossible to restore. Asterisk for Roberts. The aftermath brought praise and reflection. In his annual year-end report on the federal judiciary, he indirectly addressed the matter. The judiciary's authority depends on public trust. Trust that judges decide cases by law rather than preference. And trust that our process values truth above all else. When that commitment to truth extends to all aspects of our public service, we strengthen not just the courts, but the constitutional system we are sworn to protect. Asterisk legal scholars immediately recognized this as his first public reflection. On the Senate confrontation, Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe commented, asterisk without naming Patel. Roberts affirmed the principle that guided his actions, that truth is not partisan, but the foundation of legitimate governance asterisk. The incident also prompted systemic changes. 6 months later, the Office of Personnel Management introduced stricter verification procedures for all federal appointees requiring Senate confirmation, including direct verification of academic credentials. Senator Chuck Grassley sponsored the Public Service Integrity Act, establishing criminal penalties for falsifying credentials during the federal appointment process. The bill passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. The American people deserve to know that those serving in public trust positions represent their qualifications, honestly, Grassley said at the signing ceremony. This isn't partisan, it's about integrity in government. Risk. The confrontation also became a teaching moment in legal education. Law schools across the country incorporated the Roberts Patel incident into professional responsibility courses. Georgetown Law created a new ethics program emphasizing honesty in representing professional credentials. Dean William Trina explained, asterisk, every profession depends on trust, but in law that trust is foundational. Falsely claiming legal training undermines public confidence in the rule of law itself. We want our students to understand that their integrity begins with honesty about their own qualifications. Asterisk, the cultural impact was equally significant. In an era of alternative facts, this was a rare moment where truth prevailed. Major news outlets began verifying guest credentials more rigorously, and several issued corrections for earlier segments where Patel had been described as a Georgetown law graduate. Asterisk, a Gallup poll conducted a year later found that 78% of Americans, including majorities of both Democrats and Republicans, approved of Roberts' handling of the situation. Presidential historian Doris Carnes Goodwin summed it up. Asterisk, despite our divisions, Americans still believe truth matters. Chief Justice Roberts gave voice to that belief when it was needed most. Asterisk, Patel's fall was steep and lasting. His name became synonymous with credential fraud, and 5 years later, The Atlantic profiled him as a private sector consultant living quietly out of the public eye. In a rare interview, Patel admitted, asterisk, I made a mistake that grew into a deception that defined me. Ironically, if I had been honest about not finishing law school, it probably wouldn't have stopped me from serving in government. The cover-up was worse than the original failure. Asterisk, Roberts' legacy, by contrast, grew stronger. Even critics of his judicial philosophy acknowledged his integrity when he marked his 20th anniversary on the Supreme Court, often citing the Patel incident as proof of his willingness to defend truth despite political risk. Asterisk, former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice reflected on the incident in a Stanford commencement address. The Roberts-Patel confrontation showed that credentials mean little without the character to represent them honestly. Roberts, with his earned Harvard degrees, and Patel, with unearned Georgetown claims, presented a clear contrast. Education serves democracy not through the diploma itself, but through the integrity with which we present our training. Years later, the confrontation entered the historical record as more than a Washington scandal. Georgetown Law honored its legacy by establishing the annual Roberts Lecture on Professional Integrity. With the inaugural speech delivered by Roberts himself without mentioning Patel, Roberts spoke of the broader principle, asterisk. The law at its core is a commitment to truth over power and principle over convenience. When we refuse to tolerate deception, even when confronting it is uncomfortable, we honor not just our profession, but the constitutional system we are sworn to protect. Asterisk.